Okay, we're live. Hi. Hi. Hi, Erin from Fertile Hope Yoga. And hey, everybody out there at CNY and the Fertile Spirit. So I'm Danielle from the Fertile Spirit, which is our new patient support program. And I'm going to be doing these like weekly interviews with different people who are experts in their field. All in the kind of like holistic wellness, emotional, psychological space. So I thought to kick off this series of all people, I should talk to Erin from Fertile Hope Yoga, because you've been such like a veteran and an integral part of the holistic kind of arm of CNY and just everything that you've brought to the community with yoga and mindfulness. And so I just thought we should have a chat, and maybe people can kind of learn some things along the way.
Well, it's just fun too to get together with you, Danielle, to bridge. It's like a bridge it's really amazing to experience and be here as we expand what support looks like at CNY Fertility and broaden that. And, of course, now be able to do it online and for anyone in the world is just really a cool new way that this whole thing has evolved. So I'm excited. I'm excited to chat tonight.
Yes. Well, we were kind of talking because I know yesterday on the Fertile Spirit page, I kind of did a focused little talk about trauma and healing, and you said you had watched it, and that we kind of offline we were kind of talking about trauma, and so I think we want to kind of continue that conversation. But I know you had said that there's kind of a story to how you ended up at CNY, and all of this ties together in different ways. So I was going to ask you to tell us the story of how you came to CNY and started working with Dr. K.
Well, so I loved what you had to say. And I don't know if anyone saw Danielle's live yesterday about trauma. You guys can watch it on the Fertile Spirit. But it got me really thinking, and I had already I'll cut to the chase. So long story short, I had already specialized my work in women's health. And when I met Dr. Keltz, one of the first things, and I'll never forget this, what he said to me is, do you know why a lot of my patients are not getting pregnant? And of course I had no idea. I said, why? And he said, because it's too hard. They can't go on. They stop. They quit. And I want to be able to give them resources and tools to help them find their strength, build resilience, and be able to keep going so that they can have their dreams met. And that was the start, and from there, it just reminded me, why wouldn't someone be able to go on, right? Why? And in this process, it's so often that, I specifically work with women, so that's my experience. So all of my vantage point, most of it comes from that. But there's so many moments where women get to that point where it's like, I don't know how to go on. And really, when we look at what is the buildup to that, it's traumas, like either like you were talking about yesterday. I don't know if you want to do like a little recap for us.
Recap of trauma, sure.
Yeah.
So I was saying yesterday, I have a very, psychological background. I've trained in counseling psychology, and there's been a huge movement, I think, and a lot of awareness in the last 3 to 5 years about this idea of trauma, which we all experience to varying degrees on different levels, and that trauma is really stored in our bodies. And there's different kinds of trauma. So there's the big T trauma, and then there's the little T trauma. Big T trauma is like a big event. So it could be a car accident. It could be, like a
miscarriage.
A miscarriage.
Losing a baby.
Sure. A sudden death in the family, a massive natural disaster, right? Like these are big T traumas. But there are also these little t traumas, which are very insidious and kind of tricky because we almost don't notice how they are affecting us. And they're repeated small events over and over and over again that build up in our nervous systems. And then we're kind of living in this constant state of fight or flight or freeze. And this is what dysregulates our nervous systems and our bodies and gets us into a place of really being unbalanced and unhealthy. And we're kind of constantly chasing it instead of giving ourselves a chance to get back into balance. So that's the little trauma overview.
So like phone calls, like with regards to fertility, right? Like I have like getting those phone calls about with test results, right? I mean, sometimes even calling a clinic, right, can be a whole thing, right? Where you go, even having appointments, like multiple appointments. I mean, it's not easy. You know, the ultrasounds, the constant.
I was going to say the ultrasounds. How many follicles do I have? How many, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's constant. And of course, like, you know, we were discussing off camera, like, thank goodness for all the technology and the medicine and all these things, but it still doesn't negate that it's our bodies through this process are constantly being, you know, have so much to process. And at some point, you know, with that cycles, you know, multiple cycles, miscarriages, you know, all kinds of things, eventually, yeah, it would feel impossible to go on if, you know, you haven't attended to what we specialize in, right? Which, you know, of course we're biased, but I don't know. I don't even know if I'm biased. I think what we do is actually some of the most important work that there is, because mental health, emotional health, all of that directly impacts our body. Like, you know, we could talk about how the neurotransmitters work and all that. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that and how the mind-body connection works.
Yeah. And like I was, you know, saying too about how cortisol levels, our stress hormone, gets super elevated when we're in a dysregulated state of fight or flight or freeze. And that is not healthy for having like a normal cycle, or for, you know, it's like all of these things play in together. And I think just like speaking to, just to kind of circle back to what you're saying about like what Dr. Kilt was saying 2 years ago, like my patients don't want to go on. One of the things that immediately comes to my mind is, well, then how do you go on? Like, what do you do? And I think if you can't move the anxiety, the fear, the grief, the whatever it is, like if you can't like actually move that through your body, it just gets stuck.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And there's actually that, like when anybody experiences a trauma or just anything stressful, a stressful event, and we all experience trauma differently too, right? Like in what, like your nervous system and my nervous system we could experience the same thing, and like you may have zero impact, and I could be, you know, dysregulated completely. I think that's noteworthy too.
Yes. Yeah. I think, you know, so many of us, depending on also like, you know, getting back into kind of like the very early years of our upbringing too. It's like if we were growing up in a home, in a family system where there was a lot of, you know, maybe there was chaos, or maybe there was some level of uncertainty, or there was a lot of change, you know, we might not be as resilient in terms of what we can handle. So for sure, that's totally a factor. And then also just how our individual personalities and how we respond to events, because like some people will respond by maybe going into flight, which might look like anxiety, like lots of buzziness and lots of anxiety. And some of us might go into freeze, where we just kind of shut off and we just numb out, right? Or fight would be like to get really reactive.
Right.
Yeah.
And no matter what you go into, the neurotransmitters actually that get triggered actually bathe every single cell. It's not just a brain thing. Like, this is not just happening in our brain. The neurotransmitters actually end up bathing every single cell of our body. So what that means is if we're not active, and maybe we can move this conversation to like active tools, like how do you create resilience and how do we move through this stuff? Because that's what we do from different approaches, but it's, you know, both are very important. But what happens is it does get stuck. Our bodies literally have layers of stuck. And so what does that do? Well, it can shut down, you know, how our blood is moving, right? Or how, you know, in yoga, we talk about energy and we talk about energy flow and we talk about just all the fluids, right? How everything is moving in our body. And so when there's a portion of that that's stuck, it impacts everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just also reading. I don't know if you can see the comments as well, Erin, but
oh, I can't. Oh, maybe I can. Oh, yeah, I clicked on comment. Oh, wow, look at them all. Hi, guys.
Yeah, I just want to say hi to everybody who's listening, and you know, and just we're here. And I'll just give you like a quick overview for those of you who aren't familiar with the Fertile Spirit or aren't familiar with Fertile Hope Yoga. So Fertile Hope. Well, I'll let you talk about Fertile Hope Yoga.
Okay. Oh, now. Okay. Yeah. So, long story short, so Fertile Hope Yoga is an outgrowth of the program that I ran in person in CNY. I'm here in Rochester, New York for a little bit over 10 years. So, but what I realized was as CNY was growing, as we were reaching out, and just from my yoga students, you know, they kept asking, you know, my sister, how can my sister do this? How can my best friend do this? They don't live here. I decided to figure out the technology piece and bring the program online, which has been amazing because I've been able to create in ways that I never could do in person. So yes, so Fertile Hope Yoga is a support wing, I guess, of CNY that used to come from the in-person. And then, you want to talk about how you came in Fertile Spirit?
Yeah. And then the Fertile Spirit is a brand new program at CNY, and it's like our dedicated patient support program. So it's for, you know, more kind of psycho-emotional support. As we all know, it can be very stressful. And there's so much involved in this fertility journey for us. So we at CNY, I think the staff, the doctors and nurses and everybody was just seeing that there was more and more of a need for there to be a dedicated support. So we have basically, we have fertility coaches and doulas. Everyone has different specializations and trainings. There are some people who are more focused on health and wellness. There are some people, we have a couple hypnotherapists. I have a background in counseling psychology. We do art therapy. We do all different kinds of things, basically different ways to kind of meet you where you are. You can do a one-off session. We have packages, and we're going to have more support groups. So we're here too. We're at on the support tab at cnyfertility.com. You can find more about the Fertile Spirit. But Erin, I just wanted to say one quick thing, and we'll get back to the tools and techniques for working with trauma. But one thing I wanted to say, and what's so beautiful about Fertile Hope Yoga, and what I think we're hoping, you know, will continue to grow with the Fertile Spirit, is community, because healing happens in community, and healing happens in relationship, and healing happens in connection. In terms of nervous system regulation, we actually, when we really connect, like there are these mirror neurons, and we're mirrored by another person, and our nervous system starts to kind of feel like, I'm safe. So, like, I think what's so beautiful when I went to Rochester and I heard stories about what you created there in the community, and just how even like the rates of pregnancy were higher in your group, because there was this, like, people were not only working on themselves physically, but they were working together in community and relationship. So
yeah, I've actually tracked over time, like when people of course, the people who stay in the program till they're pregnant, 90% of my students we call it graduate.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we at Fertile Hope Yoga, I have just developed, it's like a special framework that I've developed. I call it yoga on and off the mat, but it's called Bloom. And so B is it's kind of the first step is like be in your body, right? One of the first ways that to get out of, to be able to regulate our nervous system is to get in our body. And then it's lean into community, because like exactly what you were just saying, there is to have a witness, to know that you are in a group of women who, and I have very specific rules about how we create safety, but we do group circles and, just in different, I call them like affinity groups, where if I had another job, it'd be a matchmaker. So I actually have them fill out a survey, and then I match them into small groups. And then the next one is to open to learning and growing. And that's through, things like all kinds of like mindset work and coaching work, curriculum kind of stuff. And then through that, it's open and be in healing, because now we've set the environment. Healing happens when we have, you're in an environment that allows healing. It's not like we can just say, I'm going to heal today. It's not like something we just check. Right. What we can do is put ourselves in create environments. We can make choices around to facilitate healing, but certainly once we are there and start to feel regulated, it's a process that happens. And then the last in the Bloom is the M, which is manifest miracles, because yes, babies, all the babies, but yes to all the amazing things that this journey, fertility journeys, allow us to unlock and find out about ourselves and our ability to just be the best of who we can be and bring that into all parts of our lives and impact generations to come.
Yeah, it makes me think too about just like the narrative that we tell about ourselves, and our story is so powerful. And so being in a community that supports a narrative that has that broader perspective of like, how are you moving through this and who are you becoming as a person, and that there's such an opportunity in it, because we can feel, and rightly so, I mean, we can feel devastated at times, or lonely or scared, but there's also a way of moving into it as an opportunity to practice becoming a bigger, deeper person. And I think that's like that can get lost. That can often get lost, but when we have people there to kind of remind us, and again, it's like your beliefs, that the beliefs that you have about yourself, that they create the feelings, and the feelings create the behaviors, and then the behaviors create the patterns and the habits, and that becomes your life. So it's like kind of really working on like, what story am I telling myself as I'm moving through my day, or through, whatever aspect, whatever step of the fertility journey is so important.
So important. So important. Yes. We do a lot of that work, and reinforcing it for each other too. Because when you show up, like I have one rule is that, I have a few rules, like not many though, because that's one of the things about a healing environment, right? Like we have to have the room to be what we need to be in any given moment, our authentic selves, right? But one of my rules is show up. Usually when you don't want to show up is when you need to show up the most. And you don't have to be anything or do anything, but you show up and just see what happens. And usually those are like the most transforming moments, because it's scary to use your voice and to be seen in such a vulnerable state. But man, once you learn like that's actually the most courageous thing and can start tapping into that. And I mean, I don't know what else there is. I mean, you're going to get through anything, I mean, that's like resilience training, that's the best thing there is.
Yeah. Yeah. The power, I mean, I feel like this has become a cliche in the last 2 years with Brene Brown and all this, but like the power of vulnerability to transform is just, it's wild. And it's so counter to kind of what we're taught in our culture, the way that we're raised. Like we're so raised to be indestructible, but we're really shutting off from the truth and the light that's inside of us when we do that. So, yeah.
I think that's one of the conflicts in terms of beliefs that comes up a lot when someone's struggling on their path to parenthood too, because that is a lot of us are, okay, we do this, we power through, we don't listen to our bodies, we, mind over matter, you just kind of go, but to fertility is like, it's the biggest creative project there is, really. And in that is listening, is intuition, is honoring. Otherwise, it shuts down, right?
Yeah.
Or there's incongruencies. So it's kind of sometimes one of the hardest parts about this is like it's a 180, right? Especially for really driven, like type A, this is what we do and this is what's going to happen and this is the timing. No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Surrender. It's like, yeah, the power of vulnerability and surrender when you actually start to make that shift is mind blowing, but it's like, it's a real shift for a lot of us. So, we had a question. Someone asked, Erin, is there a specific type of yoga that you would recommend that I might easily find in my community?
That specifically will support you during fertility, like treatments, or I would love to hear more, Deborah, about what you're needing for traveling patients. Is there a specific? I mean, okay, I'm going to assume that you're needing fertility support. So I'm not sure where you live. I will say that I know that fertility yoga in general it's starting to be more of a thing and there's more education around it. But it's still not, all that known, especially in smaller communities and things like that. So that's another reason I brought my program online, so that no matter where you live or where as long as you have a computer, internet, you can practice with us at Fertile Hope Yoga.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm seeing just a couple of people have really, speaking of vulnerability, have shared about a couple of really significant losses. Kimberly, I'm reading your comment. I'm so sorry. And Donette as well. And this the earlier part of our conversation and talking about trauma, because it's traumatic to have that kind of a loss, and just maybe some tools that we could talk about for kind of work with it. Yeah,
you start. You do it from the from psychology first.
Yeah, and I mean, so much of I think what the big shift in psychology at this point is really honoring the body. So I don't know if you're familiar with somatic experiencing, but it's a way of working with trauma, and it's very body based in a lot of ways. So I would really, if you haven't already, give yourself permission to allow for the grief to move through you, and wherever that is for you, whatever that, a safe place, a contained place where you can allow yourself to fully feel what you're feeling. And sometimes I say, for some people that means taking a bath. For some people, there's some music that they know just gets them every time. Sometimes it's in a safe way, driving in the car and just feeling like you're kind of in a container, and so you can just scream if you need to. I think that's a really important beginning, is to just allow and give yourself permission to feel whatever. If there's rage, there's probably a lot of rage, because it's absolutely, it's confounding, you know, to have this happen. And so just that's a place to me, like, to begin. I don't know. I mean, I have lots of different thoughts about this, but Erin, if you want to jump into, we can kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just speak from my own experience at For Hope Yoga. It's, you know, I wouldn't say common, but to be in community, you know, of women who are understanding, empathetic, who also may have been there. Most communities have, you know, specific groups that get together around infant loss, and late pregnancy loss, because it is something that's very a unique experience, and that unless you've experienced it, kind of thing, hard to really even wrap your head around, in terms of, but, you know, I think just being around others, like in community, is really, really, really important for that, and something that we do at For Hope Yoga. I have a whole group. One of my affinity groups is around for women who experience something like you, Kimberly, and also like recurrent pregnancy loss too, all different stages and trimesters. And you know what's funny is you'd think that that group would be like the saddest or whatever, because I'll go around and visit the groups online. They're wild. They are so fun. I feel like it's just one of those like polarized, you know, I mean, when you experience that depth of sadness, you know, and hurt, and I mean, how do you get through it, right? Like sometimes you find,
Right.
you know, joy in like the absurd, and you know, I mean, they're really, yeah, who would have ever known, you know? But they've gotten together and they get through it together day by day. And anything was better together. I mean, that's the whole thing, about moving through any trauma or loss or grief or any of it. I really feel like support is not optional for any of this.
Yeah. And I will say, like, on the other side, the I don't know if it's the other side, but the, you know, going through fertility treatments and exploring what this, you know, what the potential is and what the possibilities are and what that path is going forward is going to look like for you, and really having like a place to either be in community or have, you know, having a support system, having a coach, or having somebody who's kind of like your person, or a place that feels like your place where you can explore all the questions and all of the unknowns and the concerns. And I think a lot of us, I feel like this almost goes without saying, feel so isolated in the process, you know, like, how do we do this? And the reality, as you can see, is like, there are so many of us going through it, but we need to realize that we're going through it together.
Yeah.
I think Deborah responded about just, maybe we can also, no, we're going to also hop over to Instagram. So
Okay.
finish on this, but she was just asking for something that's like focused on breath and grounding and a bit more slow pace than flexible.
Yeah. So anything like most studios, I live in New Hampshire, so there's no lack of studios, but I know, so any kind of like restorative yoga would be great. Yin yoga is that slower paced. Even like anything advertised as beginner yoga, or gentle yoga would be good. There are some specific things that, you know, depending on where you're at in your cycle. What we do at For Hope Yoga is we do group practices, but then I also focus on cycle specific practices. So really honoring exactly what you need mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually as you move through your cycle even. So like during your period, we focus on like shoulder openings and opening the line from your heart to your pelvis, and like hip openings, forward folds in case there's any cramping, or and we don't do any inversions because and if we're looking at energy flow, right, menstruation is a downward flow. So why would we do something that's almost like putting a dam in a flowing river, right? Like we go with it. Or after your period, as you're moving up until ovulation, that's really when you can do anything like back bends, forward bends, inversions. That's really the time for a more rigorous practice, to get the blood flowing, to process, to move. Just that's your time. And then, of course, after, if you could be pregnant during that time, everything gets a little bit more gentle, more hip opening, shoulder opening, anything to calm the nervous system too. So there is something that, yoga is great, but there is a way to practice it that's completely in line with what your focus is right now.
Yeah. And is it okay to hop into?
Yeah, of course.
Say, like, whether or not you have a lot of experience with yoga. I love some of these comments. We are so happy to be doing this and to be providing support. But also just trusting, as Erin was saying, like trusting your body. So whether you're even if you're in a class, right, and they're asking you to do something and you are in touch with your instinct and it feels like a no, do what feels good to you. But let's say you're not in a class. Let's just say you're home, you feel like you want some movement or something. Like, I invite you to, again, like put on some music, something that feels right to you, and just really listen to your body. Like maybe your shoulders feel tight, maybe, and just like, it doesn't have to be, be perfect form or anything like that. It doesn't even have to be yoga necessarily. I hope that's okay that I'm saying this, but like,
yes, yeah, of course.
So much of this is about being in a deeper relationship to ourselves. Like sometimes we don't even know who we really are until we go through a journey like this, because it forces us into a confrontation with ourselves. And so even using like the body movement to kind of be in conversation with your body and to just trust what it needs. Because, there's a lot of information out there, and that's great. And there's also so much wisdom inside. So I think both can work together really nicely.
Yes. That's exactly how we practice it for Hope Yoga too. And sometimes we'll even go into some of more like flowy, things on the ground where I'm like, work to get everyone out of their heads completely and just move, kind of almost like in a trance, right? In like a dance, and kind of lose themselves in their bodies, because that's when we find the connection, when we can kind of get rid of the noise a little bit. That's when our heart and our, that's when we hear ourselves the loudest.
I think the final thing I just want to say, because I feel like I have to say this all the time, and this is like such a beautiful place of crossover for the Fertile Spirit and for Hope Yoga, is like the breath, come back to the breath. And I like to suggest that people breathe in through their nose and out through their mouths a few times, just to really signal to their nervous system that they can start to let down.
See, now I want to breathe. Thank you for the invitation.
If you're sitting there, exactly, and maybe you're waiting for your ultrasound, and you're just like, just remember that breath in through the nose and out through the mouth, and connecting to it. Maybe doing, count it on your hand, do one hand, do 5 breaths, and you'll start to create those little shifts. So
I've done advanced yoga teacher trainings where, I will never forget, there was a woman in this advanced teacher training who was paralyzed and in a wheelchair, and her yoga was the breath. And when we take everything away, who cares what our legs are doing, really? Who cares what our arms are doing? Who cares? It comes down to the breath. So when someone, in my group practices, or, you know, my students would be like, oh, I don't, well, then sit there and breathe, you know, you can breathe with us, right? You can breathe, right? Okay, well, then you're doing the yoga, you know, that's it. It doesn't have to look like anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe the simpler, the better.
Yeah. Well, Erin, thanks. I'm so glad we could chat here. And, you know, you can find the Fertile Spirit at the support tab on the CNY Fertility website. We have coaches and doulas and people to help you and support you through your journey. So check it out. And then, Erin, should people go to fertilehopeyoga.com to
Yeah, you can go to fertilehopeyoga.com, or you can go, Fertile Hope Yoga is kind of all over the CNY Fertility website too.
Yeah.
I don't exactly, I mean, it's just kind of it's all over there. So I think it's under the support tab. I think there's actually on the website a whole yoga section on the, that you guys can tap into. And I do have, you can get access to my whole library of cycle specific videos for 2 weeks. I open that up. You want to just practice and, you know, see what it's like and get a taste for it.
Sweet. Okay. Thank you, Erin.
Yeah.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.